Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you are a new viewer or subscriber. My name is Kyle, and today I'm going to be giving you guys a complete Blu-ray collection video. I have not made one of these since I believe 2017, so it's been over 2 years, which is insane. I can remember setting up this shelf 4 years ago, painting it and putting all my Blu-rays there, and at the time I only had the first 2 rows completed and about maybe a third of the third row completed. Ever since 2016, I've been collecting more and more Blu-rays to the point where I am almost at the end. I have about 5 or 6 Blu-rays to fill in left, and afterwards, I have the whole shelf done. I'll have to get another one. So anyways, guys, sit back, grab some popcorn, and without further ado, let's get into this. I'm not going to tell a story about each Blu-ray I own because the video will be like 2.5 hours long if I do so. But I will stop along the way to tell you guys some important movies of mine, and if I have collections, I will talk about each one. We're starting off this collection with all my Numerical films. I put them in order from Numerical and then letters. So we're going to start off with 12 Angry Men. This is one of the 2 Criterion Collection films I own. 12 Angry Men is one of the greatest films ever made, and I don't think that's a disputed opinion, because it truly is a masterpiece and must be seen by everyone. Next up is 12 Monkeys, really fun movie. I think it celebrates its 25th year anniversary this year, so I might make a video for it. 21 Jump Street and 22 Jump Street, awesome comedies. I love the first movie so much. It was literally the movie to see the year it was released. Like, if you didn't see it at my school, you just weren't cool. Like, everyone had to watch it. And the second movie's a lot of fun too, but definitely the first one's the better one. Next up is 42, one of the best sports movies ever made in my mind, and this is such a great movie. I saw it with my dad when it came out, and it was so special to both of us. We both love baseball, and this was the first time that we saw Chadwick Boseman, and just look how far his career's come. He's now in Black Panther, and he just starred in Defy Bloods. He's a very terrific actor. Of course, Harrison Ford's great. This is a great movie. Next up is 300 in its exclusive Steelbook edition. I have quite a few Steelbooks, as you will see in this collection. 300 is a really awesome movie. I've always really liked it. I know it has a very mixed reception, but I always thought it was stylistically cool. Zack Snyder has a vision, and we'll talk about some of Zack Snyder's movies as we keep going. Okay, so now we're going into the letters, starting off with A Clockwork Orange by Stanley Kubrick. One of the most disturbing films ever made, but such an amazing film. I haven't seen it since, I think, 2016, but I still remember every minute of this movie. Act of Valor. This is the first bundle. I have a couple in this collection. This is of Air Force One and In the Line of Fire. Air Force One has always been okay to me, but In the Line of Fire is a really awesome movie. If you haven't seen it, definitely check that one out. Okay, next is a pretty big collection. This is the Alfred Hitchcock Limited Edition Essentials Collection. This includes Rear Window, Vertigo, North by Northwest, Psycho, and The Birds. All 5 of these movies are great. Alfred Hitchcock is, of course, one of the greatest directors of all time. The master of suspense, that's for sure. Alien, Aliens, and Alien 3. I actually enjoyed Alien 3. I really like the director's cut. The theatrical is okay, but I think the assembly cut of this movie is actually pretty good. Another collection of American History X and A History of Violence, 2 excellent movies. If you haven't seen them, please check them out. American Made, one of the most underrated films of 2017. American Sniper, fun fact, this was the first R-rated movie I saw in the theater. Do you like Huey Lewis in the News? Because if you do, I think you'll like American Psycho. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Annihilation, Apocalypse Now, Apollo 13, Houston, we have a problem, Arrival, and Arthur Christmas. Really fun Christmas movie. I have always enjoyed this one. The Avengers, Avengers Age of Ultron, Avengers Infinity War, and finally Avengers Endgame. All 4 of the Avengers movies. Guys, it's crazy. I remember seeing the first one the day it came out. I've seen all of them the day they came out, but I just remember watching the first movie. Awesome. Age of Ultron, not as good, but I still think it's pretty good. But man, guys, the anticipation for Endgame was so massive. I can remember seeing it with a group of friends. I'll never forget that experience. Baby Driver, my favorite movie of 2017, and one of the best action movies of the last decade, and one of my favorite movies of the last decade. Edgar Wright, we will talk about all of his movies as we keep going, directed the hell out of this movie, and the cast is incredible. And yes, it's got Kevin Spacey, but, he was good in the movie. The Back to the Future 30th Anniversary Trilogy. I love Back to the Future. I got a poster of it right behind me. I have an even bigger one that's currently sitting on my bed right now. But this trilogy is so special to me, as it is to, I'm sure, most everybody. But I love the first movie, and I absolutely love the second film. Bad Boys 1 and Bad Boys 2. I get to see the third one, but I definitely will soon. Here's a guilty pleasure, Battleship. It's a guilty pleasure, that's for sure. So here's my collection of Batman movies, 1989's Batman in its Digibook edition. Batman Returns. Fun fact about this movie, Batman Returns is the first film I purchased on Blu-ray, and that was in 2010. So that means I bought this now 10 years ago. That's crazy. I have the Dark Knight trilogy in their Steelbook editions, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. And last, I have Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. I liked this movie when it came out. I was one of the people who defended it. I didn't think it was a masterpiece, but I certainly enjoyed the movie. It has its pretty bad moments, but it has some really great moments too, and I feel like over the years people have begun to warm up to it a bit. Beetlejuice, Tim Burton classic. Big, really fun movie. Another steelbook of The Big Lebowski. This is one of those one and only films. The Big Sick. This was a pretty fun movie, and I thought it was one of the better films of 2017. Black Hawk Down. I have Black Panther in its exclusive steelbook edition. Certainly a really good movie, and I just love the design for this. Blade Runner, The Final Cut, which is in my mind the best version to watch Blade Runner. And I have Blade Runner 2049. Not as good as the original, but still a really good sequel. The Blind Side, awesome film, love it. Blood Diamond, one of the best films of the 2000s, ultimate classic. The Blues Brothers, this film turns 40 next weekend. I will definitely be rewatching it. 2000 for this chunk of shit. I think I've said that every time I brought up this film. That is absolutely my favorite line. There are so many great lines in the film, but for me, that is my personal favorite line. It never ceases to make me laugh. I have the Bourne trilogy, The Bourne Identity, Bourne Supremacy, and Bourne Ultimatum. Boys in the Hood, one of the greatest films ever made. I currently am wearing a Boys in the Hood t-shirt. This film is exceptional in every way. It's one of the very few movies that I personally consider perfect. There's nothing I would change about it. And also, I need to say rest in peace to John Singleton, because the last time I made a Blu-ray collection, he was still alive. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, so rest in peace to you, sir. Braveheart. I was supposed to see this film in theaters for its 25th year anniversary, but the coronavirus stopped me from doing so, which totally sucks. I hope that they still plan to re-release it at some point this year, because I definitely want to go see it in the theater. The Breakfast Club, my favorite John Hughes movie. Okay, now we've finally gotten into the C's. Starting off with Call Me By Your Name, one of the best films of 2017. Awesome film. I have the Captain America trilogy, The First Avenger, The Winter Soldier, and Civil War. I have always loved The Winter Soldier. It has always been my #1 Marvel Cinematic Universe film since the day it came out. I also really enjoyed the first movie, and I think it is very underrated. I'm not as big a fan of Civil War, but I still do like the film, just not as much as the overall consensus. Captain Phillips, I'm the captain now. I have Carrie. This is one of the 2 films where I have a special collector's edition from Scream Factory. The other one is Misery. We'll get to that. Carrie is a movie that I actually had to rewatch for one of my film classes. And on rewatch, I completely forgot how well directed this film was. I love Brian De Palma, but I forgot how well made it was. It's a really good movie. Casino in its Steelbook edition. Castaway. Catch Me If You Can, one of Spielberg's most underrated films. Charade. This is definitely one of the most overlooked films I think ever made, because not a lot of people talk about it. It's a really fun movie, and many consider it to be the best movie Hitchcock never directed. Children of Men, excellent film, highly recommend it. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Cloverfield. 10 Cloverfield Lane. If you have been on my channel for a long time, you know how special this film is to me. I have it in its exclusive Steelbook edition. I adore this film. It was by far my favorite film of 2016, and 4 years later, I still love it. It is such an amazing film, and I'm definitely one of the biggest fans of it in the whole world. Coco, this movie made me cry my eyes out at the end. If you didn't get emotional during Coco, I don't know who you are. Collateral, excellent film by Michael Mann. Commando is a film that has a very special place in the hearts of many. It is 95 minutes of just pure Arnold Schwarzenegger fun, and I'm all for it. Now we're getting into the D's with Dark City. The Day After Tomorrow, I do love this movie. It is in some ways a guilty pleasure, but it is a childhood favorite film of mine. Deadpool and Deadpool 2 in its exclusive Steelbook edition. Two really fun, raunchy movies. Death Proof. Not a lot of people talk about this film, and when they do, they just say it's Tarantino's worst movie. While I'll agree with them that it's his worst movie, it's really our least favorite film of his because there's a lot to like in this film. Demolition Man, I love this movie. There are a lot of people who hate it. It has a very mixed reception. But I am one of those people who just thinks it is a really just cool and rather brilliant movie that I feel was very mismarketed back in the day. And I feel like it's held up extremely well. The Departed, a classic in every sense of the word. Desperado in its Steelbook edition. I also believe this movie turns 25 this year. Congrats, because it's an awesome one. The Die Hard collection with Die Hard 1, 2, 3, and 4. Thank goodness it doesn't have Die Hard 5 because that movie should not exist, but if it did, I would definitely throw the disc out. So we have the original Die Hard, which is obviously an action classic. We all love it. Die Hard 2, fun movie. Die Hard with a Vengeance is, in a lot of ways, my personal favorite Die Hard movie. It really competes with the first one, and I love it. Live Free or Die Hard, not as bad as a lot of people say, despite its PG-13 rating. I think the movie actually has a good plot and some really fun action scenes. Don't Breathe. My other Criterion collection is Dr. Strangelove, directed by Stanley Kubrick. This is a fantastic satire with some of the craziest, just weirdest moments that feel so little, but they mean so much. This is a great film. Drive. Dunkirk. Easy A, one of my favorite high school movies. And speaking of high school, The Edge of 17, another one of my favorite high school movies. Edward Scissorhands, celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. This Christmas, I want to make a special video for this film, so stay tuned for that. Aaron Brockovich, I love this movie. This film is excellent. And I think it's 20 years old this year, so I might make a review for this one. Escape from New York, classic, badass, cheesy, dumb. It's all of those things. It's one of those movies that is just, it's bad, but it's amazing at the same time. And John Carpenter's direction is great, Kurt Russell's great, but this movie is so silly and it knows it. E.T. the Extraterrestrial. The Evil Dead. I only own the first movie. I want to get the second film on Blu-ray. I have it on DVD, and I don't yet own Army of Darkness, but I want to get all three of them because Sam Raimi's Evil Dead collection are movies that are just, they're so different, but that's why we love them. It's Sam Raimi at his finest. It's Sam Raimi at his earliest, where he was learning filmmaking techniques, and he really did inspire me. He always has. But these movies are very inspirational because they're proof that you can make films with next to nothing and they can lead to acclaim and success. We are on to the F section, starting off with Fargo. Excellent film, one of the greatest screenplays ever written. This movie is just amazing. I actually reread the screenplay for one of my classes, and it flows so perfectly. This is such a great movie in every sense of the word. Okay, now we're on to my favorite guilty pleasure franchise, the Fast and Furious movies, with the first Fast and Furious, which is my ultimate favorite guilty pleasure movie. I love this film so much. Too Fast, Too Furious, my second favorite guilty pleasure movie. Fast 5. This is one of those movies that for some they'll say is guilty pleasure, for some they'll say it's a good movie. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. It's a combination of both. But I definitely think this is the film that revitalized the franchise and led us to where we are now. It has some really good action scenes. Fast 6 in its Steelbook edition, and I have The Fate of the Furious in its Steelbook edition. I don't own Fast 7. I'm not 100% sure why. I'll get it eventually. But I'm looking forward to Fast 9. I enjoy these movies. They're silly, but they know they're silly. The Fifth Element. Fight Club. We're not supposed to talk about it, so I'll put it away quickly. The Final Destination quadrilogy. I do not like the fourth movie at all. It's terrible. But I really like the first movie. I think it's a genuinely really good movie. The sequels, 2 and 3, they're okay, but the first one I think is really good. But they're movies that you can just pop in and enjoy. Sit down with your friends and have a lot of fun. Forrest Gump, amazing film. What needs to be said about it? From Dusk Till Dawn, a film that is really two different films meshed into one, but it's a really fun movie altogether. I like the first half a little more than the second half, to be honest. The Fugitive. I mean, what can be said about this movie that hasn't already been said? It's a classic. Gotta have it. Full Metal Jacket, another film directed by Stanley Kubrick, and one of the best Vietnam movies. Okay, now we're on to the G's, starting off with The Game, directed by David Fincher. Really good movie. I do not like the ending of it, though. I think everything up to the ending is great. The ending, just not really for me. Get Out, one of the best films of 2017. Awesome film. Ghostbusters. This is one of those movies I have to talk about in every Blu-ray collection. There's a couple movies I'll have to kind of call out in a way. I am not really a big fan of Ghostbusters. This is one of those movies that for me is fun, but I've never really seen anything past it. It's not a great movie in my mind. It's fun, but I don't really see why it's an excellent film or anything. It's fun. It's fun, though. Ghost in the Shell in its Steelbook edition. I actually won this movie. Rotten Tomatoes was doing a very special thing where they were trying to sell a copy of this movie because the new one was coming out. I applied for it, and I won, so they sold it to me. Really fun story, actually. The Gift, one of the best films of 2015, and in my opinion, one of the best films of the last decade. Glass, I liked this movie. Not as much as Unbreakable or Split, but I enjoyed this film. The Godfather, I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. Gone Girl. Goodfellas, one of the best movies ever made. What can be said about it that hasn't already been said? This film also celebrates its 30th anniversary this year, so I might talk about it. Good Time. Good Will Hunting. Gran Torino. The Grand Budapest Hotel, awesome film, one of the best of 2014. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Two of the most different MCU movies, but they are really good. They are such good movies. Now we're on to the H's. Hacksaw Ridge in its Steelbook edition, one of the best war films ever made in my opinion. I really love the film. The Hangover, really funny movie. The Hateful Eight. In my mind, of all of Tarantino's post-2000 movies, this one is my favorite. Heat. This movie turns 25 this year. I might talk about it later on. Hell or High Water. Heathers. The first Hellboy. I don't really like the second movie, but I really like this one. And I have not seen the remake, and I do not plan to. The Help. Right now, this is a very controversial movie. When it came out, though, everyone loved it, so 10 years, I guess the movie has not aged well. I haven't seen it in quite a while, so I guess maybe I should revisit it, but I don't know. I remembered really liking it when it first came out. Hidden Figures. I think this is a great movie, and I think everyone else agrees with that. Next up is the Hobbit trilogy, An Unexpected Journey, Desolation of Smaug, and The Battle of the Five Armies. I have not seen these movies in, I think, 4 or 5 years, so they're definitely going to be films I will rewatch in the near future. I'm not sure how well they'll hold up, but we'll see. Home Alone 1 and Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. First movie is definitely the best, but I do still like the second film. Horrible Bosses, hilarious movie. I love it. Speaking of hilarious movies, Hot Fuzz, another film directed by Edgar Wright. This movie has the comedy, it has the action, it has the thrills, it has really everything you can ever want. I absolutely adore this film. The Hunger Games: Catching Fire. And The Hunt for Red October. Inception, can't believe this movie is now 10 years old. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but I cannot wait for Tenet. I'm so excited for it. The Incredibles and Incredibles 2. Obviously, the first one is pure childhood for me. It is my favorite of the Disney Pixar movies. I absolutely love it. I also really like The Incredibles 2. The first movie, I think, will always be my personal favorite, but the second movie is pretty good too. Independence Day, this movie is about as America as it gets, but I love it. The Indiana Jones quadrilogy, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Inglourious Bastards. Insomnia, probably my least favorite Christopher Nolan movie, but it's still a great movie, so his movies range from great to perfect for me. Interstellar. I love this movie, and I really am just shocked by how many people hate it. I know the movie is long, but I feel like that's necessary, and I also love the ending. In Time. This movie, I really liked it when it came out. I saw it, and I was like, wow, this is actually really cool. And I remember the movie was, like, trashed on by almost everybody, so I was one of the few people who thought it was good. I haven't seen the movie in years, so I should probably revisit it, but from my memory, I liked it. The Iron Giant, absolute classic, and one of the great movies of my early childhood. It Follows. Okay, now we're on to the J's, starting off with Jaws. Obviously an ultimate classic, it is a must-have, and the movie turns 45 years old, I believe on June 28th, which is crazy. The original John Wick, I don't know why I don't have the other movies on Blu-ray. I should add them. I don't know why. Because I love all three of them. Joker. Okay. This is my favorite movie of 2019, and when I say that, a lot of people will groan and will be upset about that, but I loved this movie. I absolutely loved it. And for those of you who are wondering, I have seen Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy and also love those movies too. But this movie, while it borrows from those two movies, it is its own film. It's different. It has its style. Joyride, one of the most underrated films of all time. I made a video about it, I think, maybe over 4 years ago. And it got a lot of recognition because a lot of people like the movie too. This is such a fun movie. Jurassic Park, classic. Kill Bill Volume 1 and Kill Bill Volume 2. King Kong, 2005 version, my personal favorite. The original Kingsman and Kingsman: The Golden Circle. I enjoyed Kingsman: The Golden Circle. I was one of the few people who actually really enjoyed the sequel. The first movie is better, but I do enjoy the sequel. La La Land in its Steelbook edition. Guys, when this movie came out, if you were on my channel when I published my review, I was in love with this film. When I first watched it, I was like over the moon for it. I saw it for a second time, and it just didn't click with me. So, I think this movie aged poorly. I might rewatch it again sometime down the line, but I wasn't a fan the second time I saw it. LA Confidential. La Femme Nikita, one of my favorite foreign films. This movie is just, it's so good. Please watch it. The Last of the Mohicans. The Last Samurai. Super, super underrated film. I love this movie so much. I think Blood Diamond is just a little bit better, but by God, Edward Zwick directed the hell out of those two movies. Léon the Professional, Jean Renou's performance is phenomenal, as well as young Natalie Portman and Gary Oldman. This movie is awesome. The Lethal Weapon Collection, Limitless, Lincoln, Edge of Tomorrow, or Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow. I feel like they change the title of this movie every year, but Edge of Tomorrow is special for me because it is the film that made me not want to watch trailers. Because the trailer for this movie was awful, and I started watching the movie and I went, this is great. Logan, Looper, and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I mean, these three movies are fantastic. Like the Hobbit movies, I haven't seen them in a couple years, but I'm sure when I rewatch these movies, I'll still love them because they're great. Next up, we have the Mad Max trilogy alongside with Mad Max Fury Road. Mad Max Fury Road just turned 5 years old last month, which is insane. I remember seeing it opening night, had a great time with it. The Magnificent Seven, Man of Steel, The Martian, my favorite movie of 2015. I own 2 different copies of The Matrix. One of them was given to me by a friend, thank you very much. The other one is the exclusive Digibook edition, and this was actually purchased back in 2009, which is insane to me. I love The Matrix, and I don't know why I don't own the sequels on Blu-ray. I have both of them on DVD, but I might upgrade to Blu-ray sometime in the near future. Memento, one of the best films ever made, and it now turns 20, but this is the 10th anniversary, which is insane because I didn't buy this 10 years ago, but this was the version that was available at the time. But Memento, amazing film. Men in Black 3. I'm sure I'm not the first one to say this, but I've never been a fan of Men in Black all that much. I think the movies are fine, but this one I always thought was just the most fun for me. Minority Report. And Misery. Like Carrie, this is also a collector's edition from Scream Factory. Misery is also a fantastic movie from a great book by Stephen King. Okay, I have all the Mission Impossible movies, starting off with the original. I made a video essay for it as part of my final assignment for a film class last month. If you haven't seen it, I will have a link above so you can check it out. But I really love the first film. It's very inspirational, and I learned a lot of filmmaking techniques from it. Mission Impossible 2, definitely my least favorite, but it wasn't as bad upon rewatch. It's still not a good movie, but it wasn't an atrocity. Mission Impossible 3. Ghost Protocol, definitely when I saw it, it was the best when it came out. Rogue Nation, I've come around to this movie, because I didn't like it when I first watched it, but I definitely enjoy it now. And Fallout, one of the best action movies of the decade and of the century. This movie is incredible. Molly's Game, very underrated film. I love it. Moonlight, Best Picture winner, really good movie. Mrs. Doubtfire, one of my all-time favorite comedies. Robin Williams, rest in peace. This movie will always be awesome to me. The Mummy. This is one of those movies that I think is genuinely good. I don't think it's a guilty pleasure. I think The Mummy Returns is a guilty pleasure. But I think this is a really well-made action-adventure story. It's definitely scary. Like, for me, as a kid, it definitely scared me, and there are a couple moments that, like, I remember as a kid that did scare me. But I really enjoyed The Mummy. I think it's a pretty good movie. Next up, we have a triple pack featuring Natural Born Killers, Any Given Sunday, and JFK. I'm not a fan of Any Given Sunday. I do not like that film. Natural Born Killers is awesome, and JFK is also great. The Nice Guys, very underrated film. Sadly, it will not get a sequel because it was not successful in theaters. No Country for Old Men, brilliant film, absolutely love it. Non-Stop. Oblivion. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino's latest film, really enjoyed it. The Patriot, like Independence Day, this movie is about as America as it gets. Patriots Day, speaking of Patriots. Patriot Games, this movie is really good, very underrated, and it's in its exclusive Steelbook edition as well. The first Pirates of the Caribbean film, by far the best. The original Planet of the Apes, we'll talk about some more Planet of the Apes movies, but the original film is excellent. Platoon, one of the best, and I think it's tied for Casualties of War, for my opinion, of the best Vietnam film. Next up is The Polar Express, the first movie I ever saw. Poltergeist. Predator, one of the best movies ever made in my mind, and some of the greatest one-liners of all time. Absolutely love it. The Prestige. The Princess Bride. I mean, this is one of those movies that we all just love. It's a fun movie, it's funny, it's campy, it's action-packed, it's just great. Prisoners. This movie scared the shit out of me when I first saw it. I love this film, and it's, in my mind, still Denis Villeneuve's best movie. Prometheus. I really like this movie. I think it's underrated. Not the next film, because Alien Covenant sucked. Psycho. Now, I do own Alfred Hitchcock's Essentials collection, but I bought Psycho before I was given that collection. That being said, though, this movie is obviously a masterclass. It's one of the best horror films ever made. It's just excellent. Pulp Fiction. Now, what could be said about Pulp Fiction that has not already been said? This movie has been analyzed to death. But it's proof that it's a great movie, and it continues to live on, and we still ask the same questions. Now we're starting with the R's, with Raging Bull, classic film. Real Steel. I loved this movie when it came out. I haven't seen it in a few years, so I'm not sure what my opinion is, but I remember when I saw it, I was in love. Reservoir Dogs, Tarantino's first film, and my second favorite of his. The Revenant, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and War for the Planet of the Apes. This trilogy really showed the progression of CGI and what was possible at the time. And I'm so glad to have seen all of these films in the theater because this was one hell of a trilogy. RoboCop, I'd buy that for $1. Robots, childhood favorite. I love that movie. The Rock, in my opinion, Michael Bay's best movie. Rocket Man, I still have not opened this yet. I saw it in the theater last year. I really enjoyed the film. I'm actually excited to rewatch it. The original Rocky, absolute classic, gotta have it. And the Rush Hour trilogy. I love Rush Hour. And if you don't, I'm just, like, who are you? Now we're on to the S section, starting with Safe House. I have not seen this movie in years. I remember when I first saw it, I really liked it, but I haven't seen it in years, so I'm not sure what my thoughts on it would be now. The Sandlot. Love this movie. Childhood favorite. I'm sure everybody loves it. Saving Private Ryan, the best World War II film. Scarface. I mean, who doesn't love this movie? And also, just look at the steelbook. Just look at that. The steelbook of this movie is just great. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, another Edgar Wright film. My least favorite, but like Christopher Nolan, this movie is still great. It's just, of all of Edgar Wright's movies, this is the one that I watched the least. School of Rock, one of my favorite comedies, one of my personal favorite movies, and one of my favorite performances by Jack Black. That movie will never get old for me. This is a triple pack featuring The Searchers, The Wild Bunch, and How the West Was Won. The Searchers is truly one of the greatest westerns ever. It's a movie that actually got me into watching westerns again because I was never a fan of westerns as a kid, but this movie really got me into watching them again. This is another triple feature including Seven, Insomnia, which I already own, but I got this well after I bought Insomnia. Seven is a movie that I absolutely adore. This movie turns 25 in September, and I am going to make a video on it. And The Shape of Water. Next up, Shaun of the Dead in its exclusive Steelbook edition, another Edgar Wright film. Excellent movie, it's a classic. The Shawshank Redemption, one of the few movies I would call perfect. Absolutely love it. classic. Again, like Shaun of the Dead, you just gotta own it. Speaking of classics, The Shining, one of the best films ever made, one of the best horror films ever made. This is a double feature, including Shutter Island and The Aviator. The Aviator is a pretty good movie, but Shutter Island is, I think, Martin Scorsese's most underrated film outside of the King of Comedy. Sicario. Signs. The Silence of the Lambs, Best Picture winner. And The Sixth Sense, I See Dead People. Snowpiercer, fantastic film. The Social Network, this is actually a really interesting Blu-ray case. It's so different from all the Blu-rays I own, but I love The Social Network, and it's definitely one of the best films of the 2010s, that's for sure. The Sorcerer's Apprentice, this is a movie I really liked when I first saw it. I actually still have my ticket stub for the movie, which is really cool. Source Code, very underrated film. I made a video about it. Link will be above if you want to watch it. Spaceballs, my all-time favorite comedy. I can quote this movie verbatim. I've seen it so many times. The original Spider-Man trilogy, Sam Raimi's movies will always be my favorites, and I think they will always be the best Spider-Man movies. I adore them, and I always will. I also own Spider-Man Homecoming, and this is a really big pack. I think this is the Target version. I mean, just look at this. Look at that. There's so much. This was, outside of the Raimi films, this one is definitely my favorite. I think it's actually a pretty good movie. I've enjoyed it on rewatch. I don't own Far From Home because on rewatch, I did not like it when I saw it for the second time. Spotlight, this movie really messed me up when I saw it. I've only seen it once. I don't feel like I need to see it again, but I own the Blu-ray just in case if I will. Spy. Of all the Paul Feig movies, this is definitely the one I enjoyed the most. I thought this movie was a lot of fun. I actually did laugh. Star Trek and Star Trek Into Darkness. Star Trek was the first Blu-ray I ever watched, so I will always remember the sound of the first 5 minutes being really cool. I'm not really a Star Trek fan, as you can see by the posters behind me. I definitely root for the other team. Which, Star Wars The Complete Saga on Blu-ray, I definitely, like everyone, have issues with the original trilogy being altered, but it's nice to have Star Wars on Blu-ray. This is the original trilogy as well as the prequel trilogy. I'm not a prequel hater, just to let you guys know. I don't think they're as good as the original trilogy, but I do think they have great moments in them, and John Williams' score is, of course, fantastic. Star Wars is the movie that got me into filmmaking, so I really owe my life to it. Outside of the Skywalker saga, I have Rogue One. I really like this movie. I really do. Star Wars The Force Awakens. And I have Star Wars The Last Jedi. To some people, that's sacrilege that I own this movie. I didn't hate it when I saw it, and I still don't hate it. There are parts of the movie that I think are really bad, but there are a lot of good things in it as well in my mind. A huge Steven Spielberg pack, including Duel, The Sugarland Express, Jaws, 1941, E.T., Always, Jurassic Park, and The Lost World. I own, I believe, half of those movies on Blu-ray, but this was given to me as a birthday present, and I'm very thankful of it. Straight Outta Compton, one of the best films of 2015. Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. I love this movie. It's so silly, but that's why I love it so much. Shake and Bake. Taken. Taxi Driver in its 40th anniversary edition. The Terminator, ultimate classic, just excellent in every way. And its sequel, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, for the longest time, this was my all-time favorite movie. And in a lot of ways, it still is. I absolutely love it in its exclusive Steelbook edition as well. And I also have Terminator 3. I think my dad bought this movie. I don't hate Terminator 3, but it's far from great. The Adventures of Tintin. Okay guys, so I made a bit of a mistake when I said I only have 2 Criterion Collection movies because I have The Thin Red Line, which is also a Criterion movie. I don't know why I don't remember this. I don't remember buying this, but I have The Thin Red Line, and it's a great movie. John Carpenter's The Thing. At one point in my life, this was the scariest movie I had ever seen. This movie absolutely terrified me beyond anything I'd ever seen before. I'm fine with it now, and it truly is an excellent movie. Thor: The Dark World. and Thor Ragnarok in its exclusive Steelbook edition. I'm not really a fan of Thor the Dark World. I bought this for my mom because she loves Chris Hemsworth. But I love Thor Ragnarok. This movie is a lot of fun. Plus, it introduced me to a one Tessa Thompson. And if anybody follows me on Twitter or just knows me personally, you know I love Tessa Thompson, so I'll watch anything she's in. But this was the movie that introduced me to her, and I'm very thankful for that. And also, it's just a really badass, fun movie. Titanic, I love this movie. I don't care what anyone says. Top Gun. Total Recall. I just made a video essay for this, and I will put a link above for you guys to watch it, because I hope you do. This movie is awesome. I love it. RoboCop is also another great Paul Verhoeven movie, but I've always loved Total Recall just a little bit more. Trading Places, classic. And Training Day. This movie is also a classic. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. Denzel Washington's performance is just awesome. Unbroken in its exclusive Steelbook edition. I really liked this movie when it first came out. I'm not really sure what to think about it now because I haven't seen it in probably 4 or 5 years. But I should definitely give it a rewatch because I really liked it when I first saw it. Unbreakable. This movie has aged like a fine wine. I feel like every year this movie gets better. Unforgiven. Very good Western. Unknown. The Untouchables, one of the best gangster movies ever, and one of my all-time favorite movies. I love Brian De Palma. And I did a deconstruction of the train station shootout sequence, and I'll put a link above. Jordan Peele's Us. The Usual Suspects, outstanding film. War Games, this was given to me by my friend Eric. Thank you very much. I always like to thank him because I love this film. West Side Story, my all-time favorite musical. Whiplash. This movie is outstanding, one of the best films of the last decade, and one of my all-time favorite movies, to be honest. The Wolf of Wall Street. Oh my god, this movie. The World's End, my favorite Edgar Wright movie, and I definitely believe it's his most underrated because not a lot of people like this movie as much as the others, but I love it. I feel like it's a culmination of a lot of the things he dealt with and Simon Pegg dealt with. They brought in a lot of their personal experiences into the film, and it's also a really fun science fiction movie. It's a great comedy. It's a fun action movie. It incorporates all of those genres perfectly. I love it. Wonder Woman. World War Z. Maybe one day we'll get a sequel, but I doubt it. So here are my X-Men movies. X-Men 2, X-Men United, my favorite X-Men movie outside of Logan. X-Men First Class, fun movie. The Wolverine, a little underrated. Not really a fan of the third act, but I do think it's pretty underrated for the most part. And I have X-Men Apocalypse. When I saw this film in the theater, I really liked it. I saw it again, and I also enjoyed it. So I guess I'm one of those people who just had fun with this movie and didn't hate it. But the Steelbook also looks really cool. Zathura, childhood favorite. I absolutely love it. I will always love it. And Zootopia. And last but surely not least is my major collection of all the James Bond films. And I also have Skyfall and Spectre. I'm not really a fan of Spectre, so I'm going to put that down. But the James Bond collection, James Bond has been a part of my life since I was 7. My dad loves the movies, and he got me into watching them, and I love them now too. I can't wait for No Time to Die. It's amazing how big this thing is, and it was only $99.99. They had a really special deal for this, but I'm very glad to own all the James Bond movies with Skyfall and Spectre. I'll throw Spectre a bone, but yeah, I'm very happy about that. Alright, well there you guys have it. That was another full-length Blu-ray collection video. I always enjoy making these because I know you guys always enjoy watching them. Thank you all so much for watching. Look forward to more videos in the future. I love you all. Thanks, and stay tuned.